Boys, today I'm going to be showing you how to play the Dutch defense. The moves are d4, f5. Now, most often here, white will be playing c4 as they can't play e4 yet. Now, you will play knight to f6. And no matter which knight white moves, usually they will move the knight to c3. You will then play g6. The engine does recommend e6 as the better move, which I guess you can play and sort of play like a like a Nimso Indian, but g6 is the better move. It gives higher win rate. Now, most of the time here, if white played knight to f3 first, they'll probably now put this knight out. But, if they put this knight out, they'll probably put this knight out now, but they could play bishop to g5. There are two moves here that you can play. There's one, bishop to g7, which seems really natural, defends the knight, gets away from the doubled pawns. It's probably the best move. But you can also here play knight to e4. White will most likely take. Obviously, you take back. White will most often play e3. And now you will play c6, which is a sneaky move, allowing the queen to go to a5, and if they don't either block or defend the bishop, then you will be winning a bishop. For instance, the most common move here is queen to c2, boom, and you win a bishop. If knight e2 happens, boom, you win a bishop. If bishop e2 happens, you win a bishop. But let's say in this position, you just keep with bishop to g7. White will usually either play, of course, either knight to f3 or e3, with e3 being a bit more common. Now, you can just castle. You can also do the same with knight f3. And usually these two moves are going to be paired. So now, white's most common move is, of course, knight to f3. And now, when you're entering the middle game, your main goal should be trying to put a pawn on e5. And if white puts the bishop on g5 instead of f4, which is typically the other square, this will be a lot easier. Now play d6. White will usually either move their bishop out to one of these two squares, with bishop to d3 being more common. And now you can either play knight to c6 or queen to e8. Knight to c6 is the better move. You would really only want to play queen to e8 if they've put their bishop on f4. And now, white will castle, or play a3 for some reason. I don't know why that's the second most common move, but it is. But, against either of them, you will now want to play e5, finally breaking in the center. And now, white has two moves. They can either take, in which you will do this, and now it's actually better for you, because you have pressure over here. You're going to probably put your rook on e8 at some point, and your center is stronger than white's. There is another move, though, and it's the move that's actually recommended by the engine, d5. In this position, I would play knight e7, but knight to b4 and even knight b8 are also acceptable moves. And now, white might be in a little bit of trouble here, because if they don't do anything to stop the move e4, then you'll fork their pieces. Something I like doing if they retreat their bishop or their knight is to just go e4 anyway. And after a move like knight to d4, I could potentially start a pawn attack on this side of the board with something like h6. And it's a pretty good position. And back in this position, if instead of white going bishop to g5, they instead put the other knight out, and then puts the bishop on f4, you can now delay castling, instead just immediately go d6 to get a quicker e5. But you will need to castle eventually, because you're going to need to play both queen e8 and knight c6. And also, if they go for a Catalan setup like this, you can still play d6, and after they castle, knight c6, and then you're still going to be able to play e5. But I actually wouldn't recommend playing knight c6 here, because then you can just get hit with d5. Which is why here, what you should do is instead of castling, just play d6 immediately. And then actually c6 to stop d5 from happening. Oh, and there's also some really dumb things white can do here, like, for instance, the Staunton Gambit. And really, just take and don't be stupid. And you should actually try to hang on to this pawn, as it's pretty valuable in that it prevents knight f3. Anyways, since this video is already 5 minutes long, I'm going to be making a part 2, which is going to be involving the London Dutch defense when the bishop moves immediately out to f4. Make sure to subscribe.